gangs, jail and justice. Created this podcast to help others like myself who have been through the system, who have been through the struggles, to overcome whatever it is you've been through. Hello everybody, I'm Jacob Little. I'm 33 years old and I'm based on the Gold Coast. I'd like to pay my respects to all First Nations mob, past, present and emerging. So today I've come down here to talk about networking and the importance of it. In particular around my story, I probably wouldn't be in the position that I am without the networking. And networking it's obviously a bit scary, a bit tough, and meeting new people and talking about things that you might not be comfortable with. You sort of have to get comfortable being uncomfortable to be good at networking. So my story is when I was 17 years old, I went through Brisbane Boys Yard. When I was there, I suffered institutional child abuse at the hands of a prison officer, a screw. So at that time, when I only just finished high school, I was charged with a few counts of assault, and unfortunately, I was put on bail. And I breached my bail within about 3 or 4 days. I remember waking up in Southport Watch House, and when I was there, I can always remember the smell of the watch house. The smell of the watch house is something that I'll never forget. It's like a really strong, bleachy, hospital type smell. So I remember just sitting in there thinking, oh, what's going on? I hadn't sort of remember what had happened. The night before, I took drugs and alcohol. I actually took Goon. It's like a really cheap bottle, or it's like a cheapish type of wine and ecstasy. So that's not a good mix, not a good mix at all. So yeah, I sort of remembered what happened, and I was on bail and I was on curfew, so which that meant I wasn't allowed to commit any further crimes, and I was to reside at my residential address, which is my mum's place. I was 17 at the time, just finished high school, and I remember I walked across the road and robbed somebody. I got $10 for that. So it definitely wasn't worth it. And from Southport Watch House, I remember going to Brisbane Correctional Centre. So that was the men's maximum security jail. So it's like a sentence prison for people who have been sentenced. So at that time, I was actually still on bail, but there was only one section. Back then, the Brisbane Boys Yard section was only for 17-year-olds. Anyone under 17 went to like a juvie, and anyone over that went to adult jail. So I suffered my abuse in that jail at the hands of a prison officer. On my 18th birthday, I was taken from Brisbane Correctional Centre to Arthur Gorrie Correctional Centre. I was pretty scared that very first day of jail, because I'd just been through the abuse. I watched movies. When I got there, institutions don't discriminate. There's a lot of bigger, older men. There's First Nation mob, Pacific Islander, Maori, Asian mob, white fellas. Everyone was there. Big tattooed men. And I remember I first walked into the jail yard, and it looked a lot different compared to Brisbane Correctional Centre. This was the older style jail, and when I was there, I remember I walked into the yard. So on your right hand side of the yard, there's like a jail yard. So there's 3 tiers. So I'm on the middle tier now. On your right hand side was a jail yard, and so people are out there like cutting laps, like you see in the movies. There's like people on prison phones, people playing cards. There's chin-up bars, dip bars. So behind you is a place called the Fishbowl. So a good example of a fishbowl would be like that piece of glass there, but it's like a little room so the screws can sit behind it and be protected. They hide in there. And if you want to put any forms in to put money on your phone or put numbers on your phone, you have to sort of speak through that glass to them, to the screws. So they're hiding behind there. So anyway, to your left-hand side, there's a toilet. In prison, a toilet is called a brasco. It's like jail language. So you got your brasco, you got your kitchen, similar to this. You don't have very much. There's a laundry. So that's the middle tier. So there's a top tier and then there's a bottom tier. So as you go to walk down the bottom tier, I've seen these guys doing something. I didn't know what they were doing. They were mixing up having a shot. They had this really big spoon. I didn't know what they were doing. I sort of just was like, oh shit, they were having a shot, injecting. So that same needle, that same big spoon they were using, it got at dinner that night, the food gets brought down in trays and they use that same spoon that they mix up on to eat, like for serving our food. I was just like, oh, what have I got myself into? Anyway, when I got out of jail, I ended up on a path of destruction. I was angry about what I had been through. And I was back on bail, back on probation, back on parole. I started sharing my story about, going through institutions as a young fella. I started working for the organisation that um, helped me to tell my story. So I was about 26 at this time, and I just stepped away from that gang life. I'd previously done that first stint in jail, but then I ended up back in jail again. At this time, it was for a lot more serious charges. I was looking at 20 plus years this time. I remember when I was sitting in that jail cell, I was charged under the Vlad laws. Campbell Newman brought these in. If you were charged under these laws, you'll be looking at a minimum of 20 plus years in jail, made to wear pink. You had no TV in your cell. The only contact that you had to the outside world was one non-contact visit and 1 6-minute phone call a day. So it was a very hard time in my life. I did have good family support. My mum was actually going to like rallies and stuff like that, trying to bring awareness and advocacy to all of us guys that were locked down in this unit. This whole unit was locked down with alleged gang members. So I remember sitting in my cell thinking, is this going to be the rest of my life? My dad was currently sitting in a New South Wales centre about 10 years into a 16.5 year straight prison sentence. So from the young ages for me, I grew up having jail phone calls, my mates were in jail. So that part of, my story is really relevant to helping other survivors like myself who have been through it, because they can directly relate to my story. As I said earlier, institutions don't discriminate, but wherever I go, people understand my story through story sharing, through networking. I grew up in housing commission. There's a lot of domestic violence, a lot of drinking. I remember I lived in a place called the Zoo. So this street, it was like just one street. It was all townhouses, and it was like a cul-de-sac. So at the end of the street, there was a cul-de-sac, and I remember like most houses on that street, like their family members were in jail too. So it became very normalized for me to go to jail. There was junkies, drug dealers. There was even pedophiles on my street, and it was just so normal for everyone else's family to be in jail or to sell drugs or domestic violence. I remember there was a little toilet on that strip, and there was no toilets in there, all smashed out. It was just all glass, like dirty needles. Yeah, so I suppose, I started sharing my story, and then I got put on by the organisation that helped me to tell my story. They encouraged me to start studying, so I enrolled in a tertiary preparation. There's a lady here named Suzanne Reich. She's speaking today. And through my journey of going to university and doing my tertiary preparation, I got connected in with Susan, and she helped me to start networking with other people like myself that have been through the criminal justice system, had been affected by it. And then she introduced me to this group. From that group, Suzanne Reich is a massive help and an unofficial mentor in my life. She is really an awesome woman. Through her connections, I met Ron. And I suppose a part of that in myself was being able to trust people, because coming from that life, there's a trust issue, there's a trust barrier. And sometimes when you're in that life, you feel like the only people you can hang around is people you're going to kick a door in with. And for me, it was really hard to be able to start trusting people. And when Sue reached out to me, she was so nice to me, and I didn't really know how to take it. I was like, what does she want from me? Because I'm like thinking, what does she want to get from me? Like, I don't understand why she's been so nice to me. Then she started introducing me to other guys, and we started having a weekly meeting via Zoom with other lived experience people. And then she started inviting me to events. And at this time, I think I had received my compensation money. So I had received my compensation money for going through institutional child abuse. So an institution could be a boys' home, girls' home, foster cares, docks, any youth detention centres, any churches or church-run institutions, any missions, reserves, community-based groups, any sporting teams, Girls Guides, Scouts, basically any Australian institution. Foster care systems are known as different things around Australia. So it could be DCP, DCJ, territory families, could be put into like a youth hostel, any schools, private, public, boarding, any after-school cares, any programs that are like could be even like camping programs. Yeah, so I sort of used my compensation money to start that. I started at university, and you know, through getting a job, I had to go and meet people and go to different community engagement events like interagency meetings. I had to go to like different stakeholders, and I had to network. And even though I felt uncomfortable, and as I said earlier, I didn't trust people, so it was really hard for me to break that trust. But I soon started realizing I'm not going to go kick the door in. I met you today. I'm not going to go kick a door in with you. And I started thinking, well, I'm not going to kick the door in with every single person I met, so I don't necessarily trust everyone on that level. And I was like, actually, even like I'm not going to be kicking in doors at all anymore. So it was really hard. That barrier for me around networking was really hard because I was like, I don't really know you, but I was like, I don't need to trust you. You know, not everyone you don't need to be best friends and jump into bed with them, type of deal. Um, so yeah, networking for me is one of my strong points. I'm able to communicate quite clearly, and I'm not afraid now. You know, getting a little bit uncomfortable through talking to different people. Like I've worked in remote Indigenous communities all over Australia. So what allowed me to get to them places is to be able to share my story and to network. So I've been to, just to name a few communities that I've been to in Australia, in the Northern Territory, I've been to Darwin, Alice Springs. From Alice Springs, I went out to Hermansburg, Santa Teresa. I went to Wadeye, which has the highest incarceration rate in the Northern Territory. About 6 or 8 months before I got there, there was a riot, and it was like 500, because they have a couple of clans out there, so there's like 500 people versus 800 people. The police couldn't even do anything. Half of the town got burnt down. I was pretty scared to go there, but I still went. I started networking, speaking with people. In New South Wales, I've been to Dubbo, Brewarrina, Walgett, Burke. In Queensland, I've been to Cherbourg, Warrabinda, Palm Island. Palm Island is an island, sounds Palm Island. So you go to Townsville, we had to catch a barge over to this island. They had a riot there actually as well. I think the police killed a young Indigenous woman or man, and they blew right up. It was a pretty big thing, and the whole similar things happened there. But I suppose through networking, it's got me to these places. I wouldn't have been able to get to some of the places that I got to without just going up and just having a random conversation with someone. So one of the other communities I went to was Warrabinda. So that's a community up near Townsville. Near Rockhampton. So I remember I was at Bundaberg, and there was up in Bundaberg they have a Turtle Beach, and there was like a ceremony because I think there was like turtle season or something like that. But anyway, so there was a lot of elders that come down from Warrabinda, and I seen them, I identified, I went up and said hello, and then from that conversation they invited me into that community. So from that I was able to go to that community and share my story with other fellas. I went to rehabs at that community. I went to men's groups. I went and sat with elders. So the power of networking is like a really big thing. It's a great tool, and some people don't like to talk to people. Sometimes you just got to push through that. It may feel funny. Asking open-ended questions is really good thing too for networking. So like if you see me today after the event, you might be like, you and you see each other, might walk up and say, "Did you like Jacob's talk?" So that's a close-ended question. But if you went up and asked, "Hey, what did you think about when Jacob went to Warrabinda and he said that he met the elders?" That's an open-ended question. So it's really weird that Ron asked me to do this. I was actually meant to speak in New Zealand on Tuesday morning, but due to my criminal history, I wasn't allowed to go. And to be honest, it was a little bit triggering because over my journey, over this whole period as to what got me here, I've had to put my business in somebody else's name. Sounds dodgy, right? That's just one challenge that lived experience has to deal with. I've had to I had to put my business in my mum's name. It's now my sister's name because of insurances. And then on top of that, I want to work with people with disabilities. So I have to do a blue card, yellow card submission. I've had to get like 8 references. I believe Suzanne is one of them, maybe Ron too. Going to buy a house, it's very hard. But so that's 4 things already from my criminal history. Everyone in the crowd, I highly recommend don't get a criminal history. Yeah, so from that, I suppose I wasn't able to go, but I was still able to have the conference. So I spoke to a full team at the reintegration I spoke to a team inside of the Salvation Army, the reintegration team, they were called. This is a fella named Glenn Buckner. Anyway, so he asked me to come over and he wrote me a reference letter to get there. I had to get an immigration lawyer and I got knocked back, but we're going to try again. So I've had to withdraw my application because if you get knocked back at one place, it makes it very hard to get to another place. But anyway, so Ron had told me about his event. Me and Ron done a live stream to talk about the upcoming event to try and promote it. And yeah, on Thursday I made the decision, or I spoke to a lawyer and we made the decision that I couldn't come. So I called Ron and I'm like, hey bro, I'm going to come. And he's like, oh, I can still get you in to speak. I was like, no worries. He's like, I'm just going to put you in at 10 and you can talk about networking. And I was like, all right, here we are. So no, I really appreciate him inviting me down here to talk about this because I think it's, you know, it's a tool that most people should learn. Just because I'm a business owner doesn't mean that, you know, everyone who's a business owner should have it. Everyone, you can use it in your everyday life. You know, it's sometimes people have anxiety when you go to ask for things. You don't know if you don't ask the question. You know what I mean? So, does anybody have any questions about my story, about networking, just about anything generally? Comments?
It's lovely to hear the story. With your network,
Mm.
do you actually go out and meet and to help? Because I go to churches.
Okay.
There's so many people who I love what you said. Step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You've got to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to relate to people.
Yeah.
However, but of course, when you're having a young man or older man,
Yeah.
and you build a relationship with all of them.
Yeah.
But however, it's so wonderful to have someone like yourself come with their confidence from where you've come from.
Yeah.
That you can break the chains fast and see. So, do you come around sometimes to share your story, or maybe little groups to help?
Yeah.
Maybe for I don't know a weekend or one day, whole day, sort of talk about it and help them to understand how the open-ended questions really mean so much. And not like you said, not just for business. It's just for a relationship.
Of course.
And that's very difficult for a lot of people because, and they shy away from that. Like you said, it was difficult in the beginning. But I think when we've got someone who's come out from it, and you,
So you might hold that.
oh, and and
Just a
you,
microphone,
and you really convey that where you've been helped you now to get where you are. You not that you like you said, no, you don't want to have a criminal past, but the confidence, the power, and the joy that you have as well in doing this really comes out, and that would be lovely to see small groups for maybe a half a day, helping them. How do we do open-end questions? And I think that condensing that time, which is pushing them into a space of squeezing them into a space of pressure to actually practice it. So, do you do anything like that at all, or maybe coming around to share with some people to have like a mentoring in that area? Because that's what I find is really missing. I mean, people can't afford to go to a TAFE or something to get a course on how to communicate. However, what you've just released out here can really affect people to want to get that desire. And I think just a few hints and a few hours of practice, it's like there. So I'm wondering, do you do that at all?
I do speak at different community engagement events. So one I done with Suzanne Reich was the Vulnerable Persons Conference. There was the conference I spoke at recently. I do go out to different organisations and do different talks. But it's not something that I do all the time. But I'm looking to get into more public speaking and things like that. So it's something that I'm definitely open to. Ron means a lot to me, and he's done a lot for me as well. So I don't know if you work here or you don't, but yeah, this is a purely love job. because Ron and the message that he pushes for the lived experience community and many other communities is very important. There is one tool which is very cheap, which I feel is a very good tool to have. I went to a thing called Toastmasters. Are you familiar with Toastmasters?
Yes, my husband's a Toastmaster, has been for 2 decades.
Fellow Toasty, right?
I'm not in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was really good because for this conference that I spoke at Sydney, the reintegration conference, I was scared. I was like, it was like the biggest one. I think there was between 80 or 120 people roughly. So going to that one was really, really hard, and I wanted to be as prepared as possible, and I was literally still shitting myself. I remember one of the scariest times in my life was when I got locked up the second time when I was in custody, and they segregated all the units that were in for gang associations, and we were put into a unit where we were literally at war with a different club that we were in the unit with, and it was only me and my mate. There was me and him, and there was 8 of these guys, and we had to go on the yard with them. And I said during the speech, I was like, "This is the this is the scariest time of my life. The second scariest time was that example. I was literally so scared of speaking in front of people. So I feel like Toastmasters, it's really cheap. It's really cheap to go to, and if people wanted to get further tools around speaking and being comfortable asking the uncomfortable questions, I'd highly recommend Toastmasters. Yeah.
The local one is called, they've changed the name, it was Political Toastmasters. I think they've made it Redcliffe Toastmasters.
Or Redcliffe one?
I can give you a contact for them.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah.
If someone wanted to invite you, do they go through your business or through the people that sponsor you to do what you do?
Yeah, you could just reach out on a direct. I think is there an email address on that flyer? On the
Yeah.
About Time for Justice one?
Tiny.
Yeah. So you can just reach out via that way if you would like, to talk about it. Yeah.
Have you ever spoken in the health through the like I'm in Metro, starting in. I'm from Metro North.
Okay.
Just educator.
Yeah.
One of the things that I teach is trauma-informed care.
Okay.
Would you ever look at doing? We like to get some people and do life stories.
Yeah. No. I'm definitely open to having a discussion about that. It just depends. Like, I'm going to Victoria on the 15th, and I'm traveling a lot over the next 6 months. But yeah, like we can definitely have a yarn about it for sure. Yeah. Any other question?
How long have you been doing it?
So I started doing the advocacy for survivors of institutional child abuse about 6 years ago now, and then I started my own business about 4 years ago now. So yeah, it's been good work. I've been speaking at different community stakeholder things and interagency meetings since the start. But yeah, sort of the last 6 months to a year, I want to get more involved in it. So I'm definitely open to like speaking more at engagements and yeah.
Because I know they have for adults, particularly if we came down from Toowoomba, they've got Murray Court, and I know that's in Queensland
Yeah.
as such, because we're friends with some of the elders that were involved with that.
Yep.
But for actual youth, like that's for adults. So I'm not sure if in Queensland in general there is youth justice
Yeah.
pathway, because there isn't in Toowoomba.
Oh, is that where you're from?
Just yeah, well, yeah, we came down from there, but like they've got adult Murray Court, that whole thing, but for people under 18 or in between, there isn't that kind of helpful pathway that you connected in with elders and stuff, but you're already older.
Yeah.
Than 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more of that. Definitely.
Yeah.
There's some good organisations around that go into the centres. Andrea is one of them. She goes into the BYDC and does talks around that. And we're actually looking to go into the centre. I'm going to do some training with her next year, but I'm still applying for. As I said, my criminal history haunts me. I'm trying to I've got to get my blue card before I can do that, and we've been talking about that.
Because where I work, we do have youth justice.
You do have okay.
But there's no like actual. I think maybe they might be trying to set that up.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
But I just know that there is that gap, obviously, in some places where you just can't get the juvenile
Yeah,
area sort of connecting in and not actually being incarcerated, you know, pathways
yeah,
outside of incarceration.
yeah. And I get that too. I have a lot of young people reaching out to me because I put stuff on social media. If you're on social media, love for you to give me a follow too. It's just our business is about time for justice or Jacob Little. So I had a young person reach out to me this morning. She said, I'm so proud of her too. Everyone will love this story. She's 17 years old. She'd just been down to Canberra and spoke in front of these like Parliament people. She said it was very hard for her. A bit of her story was she's been to juvie. She's been taking drugs since she was 13 years old. She wants to get more involved with this space. She only reached out to me recently. I called her. I was like, "Oh, I love your story. You should come today." But she's working, so she's got to work. But yeah, there needs to be more mentors. I believe that for young people, like for me, I didn't listen very much when I was pretty young. But I would listen to older crims. But now, like, we obviously don't want to listen to older crims, but you want to listen to someone who has been through it, like somebody who has lived experience. Otherwise, like somebody who rocks up with a university degree who's 18 years old, no disrespect to anybody who's done that, because that's fucking hard. And I'm learning that. I wish I'd done education when I was younger instead of going to jail, but I still wouldn't have listened to somebody like that. I would more than likely listen to somebody with lived experience who's been through it. So I got a lot of young people starting to reach out to me because they've seen that I've been through it. So yeah, I feel like there should be a lot more, and I'm definitely keen to be involved in things like that. Yeah.
Further to Lucy's comment,
Mm.
with the pathways of transitioning from jail to
Yeah.
the community, we've come across, when I was with the Breakfast Club, we've come across homeless people
Yeah.
who, struggle with that transition. So, what kind of agencies are out there to support you? Isn't there a jail-based acronym? Is it like CHART or something like that? It's Crest. Okay, started with C. Got that.
Yeah.
So, how effective are programs like that? And what needs to be done to make them better?
That's a really good question. So I believe that anybody who does advocacy, well, me personally, I love anybody who works in the criminal justice system for a good way. I don't like screws at all.
That's what I don't think is current, but it's swamped. They just can't keep up with it.
All right.
And
Like
that's a big
everything else.
Yeah. No, that's a good point to raise. So there's not many, and if there is any, they're so swamped. Like your language, and I agree with it. That they just can't get to everyone. So they're, and even for us, like I wish we could do a 10 out of 10 job for everyone, and we try to. But at the end of the day, we're helping. Most of the work that we do is in the prison systems. And my dad done 16 and a half years straight. I only done 1 year. I turned 18 in custody, but I grew up in that life, so I do know about most of the services in the prison systems, but there's just not enough funding. I think there was a report or a show called Rainbow Lodge. It's about a transition house in New South Wales, and it was some crazy number, like it was in the millions, $560 million they spent um, on corrections, etc., in New South Wales. That, and inside of that, they had one halfway house that was like, so what sort of percent is that, even a percent of what they put towards these programs? So like there is programs in the jails, but there's not enough funding. So like you can only do what you can do, you know what I mean? But and then for the service providers too, and in the criminal justice system, people get the perspective that people, they can't trust anyone who works in corrections too. And then there's that inconsistency of trust from little things where they couldn't turn up, and then they just sort of, the boys would label that person, oh, they just work with screws, they're corrections. So it builds a distrust, which they unintentionally are doing because they can't get to the work because there's not enough funding. If that makes sense. Yeah. So if we could maybe put more money towards programs rather than just locking people up and throwing the key away, probably work a little bit better. Yeah.
We also had situations whereby family members would come in and they're waiting for someone to be released from jail.
Yeah.
But they weren't releasing them because they had no accommodation to go.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, definitely.
So everyone that's coming out needs to be able to say, this is where I'll be living.
Well, it depends. So just say, for example, if you get sentenced to 3 years and you serve the 3 years, you'll get out with no order. So the screws can't really do anything. But if you need to get bail, you might need to get a bail address. If you're getting out on parole, board ordered parole, this isn't legal advice either, guys. So board ordered parole and court ordered parole. So court ordered parole basically means you can just get straight out once you're sentenced. You just need to have a residential address. But then that's anything under 3 years. This is what it used to be. Anything over 3 years, you're on board ordered parole. So you need to sit in front of the board inside a jail, and they need to make an assessment, and they'll actually even go out and go to the house. So you could just do a dodgy if you got court ordered parole. Just be like, I'm staying at Jack and Jill's on 33. What it has to check out, but they're not going to go there and actually like have an assessment, see your room. But yeah, so we got a house up on the north side of Brisbane that we are looking to set something like this up in. Yeah, so we're looking to. We would like to start with Woodford Correctional Centre because it's only half an hour down the road. That's where Sharon works at that house there. Jen's in the room too. She works at About Time for Justice. So if anyone has any questions like that, you can come and ask me directly or either two of these ladies. So we do a lot of work in the criminal justice system with survivors, and we also work with NDIS for anyone who needs support coordination or support work. Many people that we help. I know I'm running over, but I'm just going to keep talking until someone takes the microphone off me. Yeah. Yeah. So 28% of the prison system is diagnosed with a disability. These are old stats too, it's from 2018. So I can only imagine how many people aren't diagnosed. So going through an institutional abuse matter, you get diagnosed with a psychosocial disability. Like myself, I have PTSD, could be BPD, could be anxiety, depression. So how many people are sitting in jail with a drug and alcohol addiction? Queensland, they don't have the Butte program or the methadone program, which is a program to come off heroin. New South Wales and Victoria, they do. So you're in jail, you've got an addiction that maybe, if you're in Queensland, maybe someone's brought it in, it's getting smuggled in. And then if you're in New South Wales or Victoria, the screws are giving it to you. On top of that, you could have an antipsychotic medication too. So I'll finish. All right. All right. All right. Yeah. Oh, I have to wrap it up there, guys. But if you have any further questions, just come hit me up. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. If you would like to follow along with what we do, you will be able to find all of our social media platforms in the show notes. We do ask that you could do us one solid. If you gained any knowledge from this or provided any value, we don't charge a fee for this, but if you could just share it with one person, that will be awesome. Let's go.